Now, just like with polygons, we can start with NURBS primitives to create our models. Now, a lot of times NURBS models are started with curves. So we take curves and we build them up into surfaces. But there's some times where we actually take the basic surfaces themselves. So let's take a look at some of the basic NURBS primitives. Now, we have a shelf here called surfaces, which has all of our NURBS surfaces. We can also create them here under NURBS primitives. So let's just go ahead and tear off this menu so we can see it. And let's go ahead and just go down the list. The first one here is the sphere. And we've already seen this one, and it's basically very simple. And we have a number of different creation parameters for it here. So let's go ahead and look at that in the attribute editor. We have a tab here called Make NURB Sphere. So we actually have a sweep, which I showed you before. So we can actually create hemispheres if we want. We don't need to create complete spheres. So we can do a start or an end sweep to this. We have our radius. And then we also have number of sections, in other words, detail, how much detail we have horizontally and vertically. Very straightforward. Now the next one is actually fairly complex, and this is the cube. Now remember, a NURB surface is composed of rectangular patches. Now if you have nothing but rectangular patches, how would you do a cube? Well, how Maya approaches it is it actually creates 6 different patches. So a cube is not just one object, it's 6 different objects. So if I look at this in the outliner, you'll see I have my cube, which is actually just a group. And if I open up that group, you'll see that I've got a patch for each one of these. So this can be kind of confusing because you'll make a cube and then next thing you know, you've got 6 different surfaces flying all over your scene. So you need to be aware of this. Now this can be very useful, but you do need to understand that this is how this particular object is constructed. I'm going to select all of this and delete it. And the cylinder, again, is very similar to the cube. We've got a cylinder here, but we have a cap on the top and the bottom. And again, those are separate surfaces. So we have 1, 2, 3 surfaces. So if I take a look at this in the outliner, you'll see that I have a NURB cylinder here, and under that I've got all of the patches. Now this NURB cylinder itself, in the attribute editor, we can click on Make NURB Cylinder here. And again, just like with the sphere, we have a start and an end sweep. We also have horizontal and vertical detail, or U and V detail. This is a term that you'll probably start to see as you work with NURBs. U and V are basically just kind of like X and Y for NURBS patches. And then we have another thing called height ratio. So one of the things about a lot of these NURBS tools is that you don't have a specific number for height and width. Usually you have a height number or a radius in this case, and then you have a ratio for the second number. Okay, so again, that's a little bit different than polygons. And again, I'm going to clear out my scene here. And the cone, well, it's very similar to a NURB cylinder, except it doesn't have the top cap. It's basically just the shape, and then there's one for the bottom cap. Now, the NURBS plane is basically the most pure of the NURBS surfaces because it's basically just one NURBS patch with nothing added, not curved around or spun into a cylinder or anything like that. But if we go to our creation parameters here, you can see we can actually do a U and V for number of detail. And then again, just like with the cylinder, we have a value for width, but then the next value is actually a ratio. And so sometimes that can get confusing, so just be aware of that. And finally, the last one is a torus. So let's go ahead and make our donut here. A torus is basically just a NURBS patch that's revolved in 2 directions. So let's take a look at this. If I go to my Make NURB Torus tab in my attribute editor, you'll see we have a start and an end sweep here, just like we did with the cylinder or with the sphere. But we have another sweep here called the minor sweep. So if we open that up, you can see how it sweeps that way as well. And this is a really good illustration of how you can create a complex object using just a patch. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is just a 4-sided patch. And again, it's just spun around into this shape. And again, just like with some of these other ones, we have a height ratio, and then we can also dial in detail up and down for sections and spans. And there you have it. Those are some of the basic NURBS primitives. So I'm sure you'll find a lot of good use for these.